All right, so this is part two of our ending discussion for Gatsby, and we're going to start. We've just talked about the idea of the sins and basically how that played out for all these people. Now we're going to get into the other stuff. So now we get into some of the meanings behind all this stuff, and one of the things that I like to point out is just the whole idea that we still have a lot of this type of behavior now. We've got these are two memes out there. Obviously, this one has a lot of upvotes here, but that tension you feel when you and your crush are both online on Facebook and you just stare at their little green dot and suddenly you know what Gatsby felt like. And obviously, I'm sure many of you probably have Facebook accounts but hardly ever use them. Some of you probably don't have them at all because it's not the in vogue kind of social media network for people of teenage uh, age. Age. A little redundant. But here we also have posting a Snapchat story for one specific person to see as the modern day equivalent of Gatsby hosting elaborate parties in hopes that Daisy attends. And that's absolutely true. And with that, we kind of get to this whole idea of obviously he's trying to relive the past. 7 years is going to be the 20s again, so we can keep back, yada, yada, yada. You can't repeat the past. Can't repeat the past? Well, of course you can. And he really does believe that. We see that he really does believe that. He does everything he can to relive the past. And he thinks that he's going to take Daisy back. He thinks it's going to be great. He thinks he's just going to erase all those years with Tom. And that, by the way, is why the moments... It's the only reason that the child in this, Daisy's daughter, is important at all. We have that line at the opening that kind of gives us some sense that Daisy is not happy with her life. But we also have the whole idea that that's something that can't be erased. Even if she said the words, I never loved you, and even if she meant them, there's still the daughter, and the daughter's still going to be around. How can you possibly just erase that and pretend that she doesn't exist? And we get all the bright, precious things fade so fast, and they don't come back. Another line from the movie. I don't know if that's in the actual book or not, because I don't have it underlined if it is. But it's a really good line, and it probably is from the book because Fitzgerald's a really good writer, and that's a really good line. But gets that idea of the truth of this. You can't go back. Gatsby and Daisy have both changed. They've had 5 years of experiences, and Daisy is a very different person. She's had a daughter. She's had these 5 years with Tom. She's been cheated on and multiple times with Tom and has trust issues and has become someone different than who she was before. So these are important things for this. We, of course, have Nick. Again, all this is happening. Nick is part of this whole affair, and got some funny memes here. We also get to this one, which, of course, kind of gets to the joke with why the end of Chapter 2 might be important, because this book is kind of a love story to Gatsby in a sense. It makes him out to be this heroic character. Even though, he's a bootlegger. He's doing all this stuff illegally. He's kind of obsessive and, not, in some ways, you can certainly look at Gatsby as not a great person, but he is the most likable character in this. And we get that because, of course, the story is being told through Nick's eyes. We have, of course, Daisy, who's pretty much just terrible. I'm going to leave this up just long enough for you to read the memes or whatever. You might have to hit pause because actually I'm going to move faster than this. But ultimately, this takes us down to this idea, the symbolism of this. That ultimately, it's all about the American dream. Gatsby wanted it. Tom and Daisy already had it. Myrtle wanted it. And, well, the sin was thinking that the American dream was for you if you are not born experiencing it. This is a book of about a pretty book with pretty dark themes because, again, Gatsby is this character that does a ton of amazing things. Many of them illegal, but still, to rise up to that level of wealth is amazing, even if it's done illegally. And for that, he is crushed down. And Tom, nothing bad happens to him at all. Daisy, nothing bad happens to her at all. In fact, many people even consider the green light and Daisy to be the American dream. That it's there for someone like Tom in the 1920s. It's not there for Gatsby. It's not there for Myrtle. These people don't have access to that. And that is a pretty dark dream, but of course we kind of set up the idea of how the 20s were pretty rough. And another thing, I don't think I have it in these slides at all, but actually I think I will add a slide here, is that this is a time period, let me full screen this again, this is a time period where these writers are called, the Lost Generation. And it's these writers that also are considered to be, they're also considered to be what we call the modernists. Basically, they're all these people that fought in World War I, or at least were witness to World War I. Fitzgerald and Hemingway, two of the writers that are most famous for being part of this, both fought in it. And Steinbeck, another one who's associated with this time period, was over there as a journalist because he was too old to be part of the war. But basically, all the sort of mass carnage of war twisted these men's minds, and they just came back broken. Basically, it's the equivalent of what would be PTSD. And many of them, they came back to this world that is this 1920s world, and it was so gilded. I mean, it's not the Gilded Age anymore, technically, but it is so gilded. It is so glittery. It's so, fantastic in some ways, but rotten down at the core, because everything about this, all the values of this book that all these people represent are all terrible. This man that gave them all these parties and gave them everything, nobody comes to his funeral. Why? Because that's not fun. That this book is pretty much just showing nothing but sort of hedonism. And this Lost Generation sees this and they turn away from it. Many of them actually went back to Europe or kind of hid and just wrote in sort of seclusion. And that's why, again, because they went through a terrible experience, came back and found a world that, they were fighting to defend America, to defend the world, and they found that maybe this was in a world that they didn't even really want to fight to defend, that maybe it wasn't worth it. So, this is just a funny meme. I found this one funny, so I'm just going to show this one for a second, but I probably should have put it someplace else. But, so then we get to this whole idea of it all, everything being a metaphor. Myrtle's a metaphor of, again, the poor reaching up. Gatsby is the same metaphor. Daisy's a metaphor that represents the American dream, and again, the only people that it's open to are the rich. Anyone who's witnessing this, like Nick, can't come away from this feeling anything good. There's just a few last ones that are funny. I don't necessarily buy this idea that it's this, it's this, but that's the funny next step that people take. But let's see, is that my last slide? Let me see if it's the last slide or not. Yeah, so that's the last slide. So that really kind of gets the idea that this is this, dark book about the American dream. And when you get to the end, like, who are the likable characters? Gatsby, maybe? Maybe you can get yourself there with Nick, but personally, I kind of like Gatsby, but I still see the problems in Gatsby. But I find myself at the end of this book hating Daisy for everything she did, hating Tom for everything that he did, hating Jordan. The Wilsons are at least sympathetic characters, although I don't particularly like either of them either. And Nick, again, he aided and abetted all of this happening. So even though he didn't see it coming, even though he, didn't plan to make any of his mistakes, he made some pretty big mistakes here that were part of these people dying and all this bad stuff happening. So that's kind of your end of Gatsby in a nutshell as far as symbolism. There'll be a few other videos out, but otherwise, this is probably the last one in the order, but I'll have a few other videos go out for other stuff as well. So please get to your one-pagers. This information hopefully should be very helpful in doing those, and that's it.